Good afternoon, everybody. Those of you in the room who are out in the regions who don't know me, I'm Carl Alexi. I'm the Associate Administrator of Safety, Chief Safety Officer, and I'm honored to hold that position. And I'm glad you're all here today. Welcome. This is the first in a long time at town hall meetings for the Office of Safety. I want to say thanks to a bunch of people. We've got a whole crew back there who put this together. Ashley, Renee, Vince, Mark Patterson, all the work you guys have done, and Jamie, we do appreciate it. This is an important opportunity to communicate a message out to everybody and to field questions over the next 2 hours. But before we get started, I'm going to ask Rick Huggins to come up and do a quick safety briefing.
For those of you in the regions, if you want to go ahead and mute your phones, I'm not for sure of the interactive capability that you guys have engaging with us, but if you'll please do a safety briefing if you guys are located at your regional offices to coincide with this safety briefing. Of course, if there's an alarm sounds, we'll exit and muster in the location that FRA normally musters in the event of emergency if an alarm were to sound on the 3rd floor. Is there anybody in here who does not know where we go? Okay, good. With that being said, the only change is if an alarm sounds and you are a floor warden or an elevator person, coordinator for the 3rd floor, please go to the 3rd floor so that we can perform our normal functions as floor wardens for the 3rd floor. CPR, can I get a show of hands of CPR qualified personnel? Okay, thank you. If you'll assist if the event occurs. For 911, Mark, can I get you to call 911 if the event we need? There is an AED located across the atrium over by the library. For anybody who has a medical need that you don't want to advertise publicly, if you'll tell your neighbor if you have something going on, diabetics, blood pressure, so on and so forth, and or write that on a piece of paper, put it in your left front pocket. If you don't have a pocket, put it in your left shoe so that we can identify a medical need not normally known if you don't have a bracelet or something. Don't think there's anything else to it. If you guys have any questions? Anything I missed? All right, thank you.
Continue on I-390.
All right, thanks, Rick. Continuing on the line of safety briefing, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Kurt Hastings group, the industrial hygienist, and some of the work that they do. Every month, I think it's monthly, Kurt, they put out a safety tip. And this is pretty good information, and a lot of us get in the habit of, if it's not something that's critical to our job, at least I do this, I auto-delete. I'm just deleting it because it's one less email I have to look at. But I certainly recommend taking a look at these. Some of the recent topics are, cholesterol education, skin cancer awareness, drowning accidents, obviously to prevent those, heat-related illnesses, motorcycle safety, distracted driving. These are all important things that, just take the time to read it. It's just a reminder, things that we take for granted. It's definitely worth it. If you have a staff meeting, it's not a bad thing to have a brief discussion at the staff meeting, and of course out in the regions, safety briefings, that type of thing. These are important reminders, and Kurt's team, they're experts. We have 3 of the 4 are certified industrial hygienists. Jenica and Libby just recently got their certification, which is a big honor, and takes a lot of work to get there. So these are definitely experts, and what they're saying is really important. So Kurt, thanks to you and your team for all that. So this morning, or this morning if you're out on the West Coast, Carolyn and I are going to be talking to you for about 45 minutes, maybe up to an hour. And then afterwards, we're going to open it up for questions. And we're looking forward to those questions. We'll do our best to give you answers, and what we don't have answers to, we'll certainly get an answer and get that out. I know Vince's team is back there taking notes and making sure that we're going to cover everything we need to cover. As you've probably heard, the focus of this meeting is to present a proposal for reorganization of the Office of Safety, although I will cover a couple of additional things besides the reorganization. The information is really, what we're going to be presenting today is a proposal and really a framework to get ourselves prepared, and we'll talk in detail about this, and looking to the future of the railroad industry, also looking at our recent past, and the direction we need to go as an Office of Safety. We rolled this out at the senior leadership meeting, and that was with the staff directors and the regional leadership in September. We've had calls with the same group of people every other week, VTC, and we've had brief conversations. And recently, I was in Minneapolis at the Railway Interchange with Carolyn Gabe and all the Signal folks, or the PTC folks, and we reviewed it with them as well. And there was a lot of good feedback, some concerns, some questions, and that's what we're looking forward to in all this. And it's key. The vital to this is going to be, and the whole reason we're doing this is to get feedback from everybody. We want to roll it out. We don't want there to be a rumor mill. We want to roll it out to everybody, have a conversation, and then talk about how we're going to move forward. You'll see that we're establishing teams to gather that information, but we'll talk about that later. But before I get into anything, any specifics, I want to talk about us as an agency. You know, there are two, or I shouldn't even say us as an agency, but us as safety professionals. There are two fundamental realities of being a safety professional, and everybody who's watching this and everybody who's here in this room is a safety professional. By and large, this is a thankless job. You know, on very rare occasions will we ever meet the people, know the names of the people whose lives we save because of what we do. We will never know the families who were not torn apart because of tragedies that happen in the railroad industry. And I know that sounds like a platitude, but it really is an important thing to understand that every day there are people who are alive because of the work we do. And it's, I mean, if you look at industry statistics from 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, if we were to flatline from there, there would be thousands of people who have passed, who were killed because of this. But now we've had this steady decline over that time frame. And so we've done a lot of work. So on behalf of all those people and all those families, thank you for what you do. The next is I think just as important, is that until a steady state is reached where we don't have any fatalities and any injuries to railroad employees or people in general, we can't be content. You know, we need to constantly be looking at ourselves, evaluating how we optimally fit in to the railroad industry and optimize safety. So really, that's the spirit of this. And nothing about what we're going to talk about today should be seen as a slight to the work that we do. And that's important to keep in mind, that, you know, change is something that's going to happen, and we're going to do this together. We should think of it rather as we see great potential in the people and this agency, what can be done. You know, I've been out, I've spoken to all of you. I've spoken to many in the regions, and I'm always impressed with the knowledge and the experience and the enthusiasm for what we do. So it almost makes total sense to me that we look real hard at ourselves and look at opportunities for change, because I hear ideas all the time, and we're gonna try to implement a lot of those ideas. So just keep that, you know, as we go through this, that's an important foundation of what I want to talk about today. One, we know it's a thankless job, and what you do is important. Two, it's, you know, we need to move forward, and we need to continue to improve ourselves. So a couple things before we get to the agenda, or to the organization. Vacancies. There's been a lot of talk about, vacancies. We're not filling them as fast. Over time, we've had more and more constraints put on the money that's allocated to us. We have less flexibility. Before, we used to hire, and we could hire above what we're allotted in our staffing plan. But that's okay. We can move money around as we need to. But we have much less flexibility in the budget that we have because of earmarks. So we have to be very, very careful. We're managing things very closely to those numbers. So the days of there's a vacancy, we're automatically going to fill it, those days are over. There's a discussion with leadership. Mike Long, Carolyn, myself, we prioritize what we're going to fill, how quickly the positions we're going to fill, and how quickly we're going to fill them. So please don't think we're not ignoring you. We're doing the very best we can, but we have to, come talk to us if you have questions about specific positions. But we're certainly doing the best we can to backfill these positions. I want to talk about quiet zones real quick. Quiet zones, that's a big deal. We're taking an aggressive approach on quiet zones. James and his team have sent letters out to everybody who has a quiet zone saying we are keeping our eye on you and you can't take your quiet zone for granted. If you made a commitment to do something to that quiet zone or to your crossings to comply with the requirements, we're going to hold you to them. If you have accidents at that quiet zone, we're going to be looking hard at you and reevaluating whether or not that quiet zone, you should keep that quiet zone. So that's an important thing that we're doing. It's an initiative that we're real happy with. We believe it's very, very important for us to do. There's a survey out there. I'm sort of jumping around. I put this together and I didn't think about organizing it, so bear with me. There's a survey out there about looking at us, turning our eye toward ourselves and say, what do we do well, what don't we do well? I really encourage you to fill that out. We're going to be asking these same type of questions to senior leadership of the Class 1 railroads, the larger holding companies, as well as suppliers and labor. And we're going to overlay how the world sees us and how we see ourselves, and we're going to look at that gap, and we're going to try to strategize on how to fill that gap. There's the Focus Inspection Program. We talked about this at RST. For all those who were at RST, we're working toward a Focus Inspection Program and a risk model. Now, the risk model informs the Focus Inspection Program, and the idea here is that we want to do the best job we can with the data we have, the tools we have, working with the people, and we do have a lot of really good people who can do analysis both in-house, in headquarters, and out in the regions. But we have limited resources, that being our inspection force. We want to make sure that where they go is where the risk is. So we want to do the very best we can. So we have a risk model that's going to put out a prioritization list for each discipline, for each inspector, and then we're going to lean heavily on the inspectors and their local knowledge to sort of look at that list and say whether it makes sense or not and make sure they're going to the high-risk spots. So all the work that Miriam's group did on the National Inspection Plan, which is no more, it served us well for a number of years. It certainly helped us out with audits, GAO and OIG audits, who, when they came in, they looked at us and they said, how do you do this? How do you know where to send your inspectors? And every time, under significant scrutiny, this model stood up. But given the data we have, given the people we have, and the tools we have, I certainly believe that we can do better, and we're heading in that direction. RST, just an update from RST. There was had a lot of conversations with people who had ideas, so we have an RST tracker. So for those of you who don't know what RST was, that was a rail safety training. That's the biennial training we have with the headquarters staff and the regional inspectors or the regional staff. And so there were a lot of ideas, so we wanted to make sure that we tracked it and acted on what these ideas were. So I'm going to just touch on a couple of them. The regional inspection points, we wanted to make sure that they were up to date, and if not, and also evaluate them from, do we need different regional inspection points for each discipline? Janet Lee's leading that effort, and she's done a great job. From that region, from that, for that list of regional inspection points, we're going to be able to do a better job of developing a new staffing allocation model, as well as that'll be a foundation for any risk models that we have. Tableau licenses, we just recently purchased 169 of them. So we're looking to make use. I talked about the tools that we have. That's certainly one of them. Getting Tableau licenses for people, both at headquarters and out in the regions. Modifications to some of FRA's inspection or reporting forms. Joe Barry had comments, really good ideas for the 54 form. That's a part of an RSAC working group. So that's something that we're taking action on as well. Informal investigation, John Boots came up and said, hey, you know, we have a lot of inspectors who identify something, and they do an inspection or they do an investigation of it and drill down and they find something. That's interesting. And we don't want to keep it just there within what that inspector's knowledge, that region's knowledge. We want everybody to learn from that. So Mark Patterson and John Boots have worked together with TTSD to come up with a way to capture that and get the word out and share it with other people. And we have the inspectors as, and whether or not they should have a GS, they should be GS 13. Now this is something that there's been a lot of effort in there, and this is important to understand. We've had the specialists come in and the regional specialists come in and work on the PD. We've had the staff directors work on it. Now, Carolyn, Mike, myself, we're working with Scott Hoos of the union, and we're continuing that effort. So we haven't given up on it, but we're certainly giving it our best effort. But I want everybody to know that this is something we've taken very seriously, and we want to make sure if it's appropriate for our inspectors to be GS 13, we want to make sure that happens. But we're going through, we're taking all steps that we can. Let's see. The NSPP. This year we're going away from the regions having an NSPP. We're going to have headquarters one from each discipline, one or two. Every year we end up with a huge document that I'm not sure a lot of people read, but the regions are going to do their NSPPs, which is great. And so they're going to be tracking it. There's no use to update it, give them more work. But certainly we want headquarters. So Carolyn has worked with her staff, and they're developing an NSPP, a headquarters NSPP, to work with the regions over the course of the next year. So those are some of the general topics I just wanted to touch on. I'm going to do a little bit more introductory remarks to the organization. And Carolyn's going to come up and talk about really something that's very fundamental to this organizational change in the system safety rule, the risk reduction rule, and really taking a systems approach to what we want to do, our audits. But we'll get into that a little bit more. And then I'll come back and we'll get right into the organization. So let's see. So let's go ahead to the first slide. So I talked about the safety trends. So this isn't new to anybody, but as you could see, going back to the year 2000, you could see there's been a reduction. If we compare ourselves to 2000, there's been a reasonably good reduction in the number of accidents. And if you were to look at the employee on duty statistics, they're following a very similar trend. But if you look over the last 10 years, you could see we've flattened out. But like I said about this being a thankless job and all the lives that have saved, you can see from 2005, if you were to continue that line and there weren't any improvements, there'd be there would have been a lot more incidents, and similarly on the employee on duty, there would have been a lot more fatalities and injuries. So, thanks to all the work that we've done, in part, for sure, we are where we are today. But I also have to, it's not just the inspections, it's the training we've done. It's the staff directors for their technical expertise. It's regional leadership. It's the administrative staff and all the work they do to allow everybody to do the technical job. And obviously it's our inspectors and their expertise and their tireless efforts out in the field. But we can't, I think it would be silly of me to not also acknowledge the improvements in the technology that the railroads are implementing, wayside wheel detectors, wayside detectors, the automated track and rail inspection, the improved metallurgy, improved tank cars, recording devices, the ties, and the fasteners for rail. So there's a lot happened. Capital investments, and of course the advent over the past 10 years of human performance programs such as C3RS, the drug and alcohol screening, and improved training processes. So next slide, please. So talk about us relative to industry. This is something that Mark Patterson found. I thought it was a great slide. It is back in the last 100 years, on the outside, you can see all the railroads that did exist, and they've all been consolidated into what we now know as the Class I railroads. So there's a lot happening out there. There's a lot of change. The way we're organized was likely that to suit the way the number of Class Is that used to exist 40 or 50 years ago. Okay, next slide. And this is how we were 50 years ago. You could see regions 6 and 8 were a little bit different, but you could see what the Office of Safety looked like. Not too different. If anybody can read that, I'll give you credit. But take my word for it. It looks a lot like where we are today. So not much has changed in 50 years. The way we're organized and the way we're going about our business. So change. Next slide, please. So some of the things, aside from all the organization that we just showed that's changed out in the railroads, there's been, a lot of change otherwise. Safety management systems are happening. Positive train controls coming in. We have a precision scheduled railroad. Now that's a business decision, and railroads are going to do that, and we've all heard our administrators say, that's for the railroads to deal with. We want to make sure that it is implemented safely. We're focusing on the compliance with the way they are implementing precision scheduled railroading. But it is happening out there, and there are hiccups, and we are keeping a pretty close eye on that. And then data, better use of data. The railroads are doing it. They're doing a lot of using the data, and they have a lot of data, a lot more than what we do, and they're using it for predictive maintenance and other tasks. So we're getting data, and we also have more tools, and we have people who know how to do this. So these are a lot of the changes that are going on. System safety and risk reduction will necessitate an evaluation of the overlap and interaction between disciplines and other railroad operations. So these are things we need to start looking at. And the present methods and processes have, we've stagnated is a word, and I think, I don't know of a better word to use there, but we have certainly gotten ourselves into a comfort zone, and we sort of stay there, and we need to be able to respond to all the changes that are happening, and to get that trend line that you saw in a couple slides ago heading down. So that's key for us. So next slide, please. So the goals for the alignment is to prepare for a future safety oversight, being data-driven and performance-based. We want to align headquarters and regions. So we're going to talk a lot about the consistency. We do collaborate, but I think our consistency can improve. Not only consistency with the way the outside sees us, the way we enforce across different regions, but also consistency the way we do things internally. And of course, accountability. We want to align similar staff activities and competencies for efficiency, and we definitely want to support the DOT strategic plan. So if you go to the next slide, everything you're going to hear is going to align. This is sort of a couple of bullet points from the DOT strategic plan. And you can see you're going to hear about data, you're going to hear about risk, collaborate, safety culture, risk management and strategies to reduce risk, and performance-based safety standards. you know, I would, if you need it, we can get it to you so you can have a look at it, but certainly what we are doing aligns with the departmental look at things. So next slide, please. So change, there is going to be a change. I mean, you may experience it more than your neighbor, but there will be change, and it affects everybody differently. You know, the good thing about this is change is not just being set up and said, here's what we're doing. This change is starting as a proposal, is working with you to get ideas, the best way to do it. But we need everybody to participate. You'll see, we're going to have an aggressive schedule, so we do need everybody to participate. We need everybody to communicate throughout, and we do have volunteers so far to make up some teams, but there'll be opportunities in the future for other teams. So we're committed to listening. We're going to present a template for you to look at and to comment on. So let's talk about what's not changing. Next slide, please. You know, headquarters and regional leadership will establish priorities. That's not changing. The relationship with the railroads will be critical, and you know, that's vital that we continue that. Our inspections, we're not going to stop inspections. What we do now, we're going to keep doing inspections. We're also going to do some other things. We're going to do some auditing, and we're going to develop those competencies. And the overall staffing level in the Office of Safety isn't going to change because of this reorganization. So, you know, while there is going to be change, it's not going to be, you can see a lot is going to stay the same. So what is changing? These are all positives if you look at it this way. There's good opportunities for the organization, for the staff, and for staff, you know, individual disciplines or groups, and also for personal career growth. I think there's a lot of good opportunities there. And we want to develop processes and a capability for system safety oversight, Class 1 railroads and passenger railroads. So a lot of good stuff. And of course, you know, these are just some basic remarks. I'm gonna hand it over to Carolyn now. The fundamental to this is the risk reduction and system safety rule, and how we're going to do enforcement on that. And we need to modify the way we go about doing that, and we have to look at things as a system and take an audit approach as opposed to inspection approach. So I'm going to let Carolyn come up and talk about some of that, and then I'll come back up and we will get into the actual proposed organizational changes. Carolyn?
So thank you, Carl. Very nice to be talking with you all today. For those who don't know me, I'm Carolyn Hayward Williams. Previously the staff director for Signal and PTC, and now currently the director of the Office of Technical Oversight. So I've been in that position a couple months, and I'm very excited about some of the things that we're doing. But the objective of what I was going to talk about today is just a little summary about system safety, what it means. Certainly we have experts who are here in the room who could talk a lot better detail than myself, but I wanted to give you a feel for what we mean by it. Some of the things that we've been doing already, we call it system safety, but we're doing it today. Some of the things that may change in the future and what this will mean for our approach to auditing, as well as to continuing with our current processes for inspections. So I'll go to the next slide. So system safety, it's really about looking at the system as a system. I mean, the word system is in the term, but it's looking at the railroad not in terms of individual assets. It is looking at it as an operating system. So the key aspect of this is really to identify what are the hazards of operating a railroad. And these are usually captured in various tools and techniques. But based on those hazards, then you evaluate what is the risk, what is the safety risk, and what's the likelihood that that risk is going to happen, and what is the frequency of that. to give you a feel for the severity. Is this something we need to look at? Is this something that's going to happen once in, 100,000 years? And then once these are identified and evaluated, you look at mitigation methods. Mitigation can be people, it can be processes, it can be technology, or it could be a mix of those. And then you continue to monitor. Did we do the right things? Did we evaluate it? And that's a key aspect of this. And as Carl mentioned earlier, the accuracy of our data and being able to take our data not just as backup from or details associated with individual inspections, individual defects, but also amalgamating that together and evaluating it in terms of the impact of the system. So that is the basic process. You can Google it, you can look at it. There's tons of books on this, but really it's about these kind of four processes that are iterative to evaluate the safety of a system. But ultimately, the goal is the same. This is an additional tool that we have. It's not replacing our inspection process. And it is focused on reducing accidents and incidents to improve the safety of operations of railroads. One point I wanted to note, and this is why I think it's different, and it'll be interesting through this conversation, through our Q&A today and our ongoing discussions, whether this is really something different or not. But a lot of our focus is about compliance to regulations, as well as focusing on the cause of an accident and trying to address that. To me, system safety is also identifying those hazards that may not have happened. They may not have been realized into an accident or an incident, and trying to mitigate those and to reduce that risk of safety. I'll go to the next slide. So talking about the mandate, the Railroad Safety Improvement Act authorized the Secretary and the FRA by delegation to issue regulations requiring railroads to develop, submit, approve, and implement Railroad Safety Risk Reduction Program. And this has manifested itself into two rules that are in the process of being published. For passenger railroads, it's the System Safety Program, and for freight railroads, it's the Risk Reduction Program. And there are a few differences between the two, but ultimately it is the same concept. And it is about railroads developing their plan to look at safety from a system level and develop their plans to evaluate their hazards, assess their risks, determine what their mitigations are, and implement those changes. And FRA's role is to oversee that process. Now, I think a very important point to note, and I probably won't dwell on it too much here, but the Act also protects the discovery and admissibility into evidence for any litigation processes, this information. And I think that's an important point to note, that this is asking railroads to go out and tell us where your risks are, and tell us and make it open so that we can evaluate how they're implementing and addressing these issues. And the Act itself will protect them from that process. So if you have any questions on that, certainly type them in or send them in, and we'll ask RCC to respond to you on that. But that is really the mandate, and this mandate is what we have been working on for years to get this about to be implemented, and it is very close. We are going through various processes right now of working with our legal partners to get this put into our regulations. So the timing, this year, next year? Mark, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, hopefully definitely
Next year.
2020, I should say.
2020. So I'll go to the next slide, and I'm just going to identify just a few key principles of this. System safety and risk reduction means a comprehensive process for application of management and engineering principles and techniques to optimize all aspects of safety. So what does that mean? That's a whole bunch of words that probably were thought up by someone who doesn't live and breathe safety on an everyday basis, as you all do. So some of the key principles, and I'll go into the next level of detail in the next couple slides. Really, you're looking at having the organization as a whole, not just the engineer, not just the conductor, not just the maintenance worker, but the organization as a whole has a safety policy. It's looking at formal methods to identify those hazards that we talked about on the first slide, and prioritizing and evaluating them to determine the likelihood and the frequency of them occurring and resulting in a safety issue. It's about data collection, data analysis, and evaluation, and looking at it not just on an individual level, but putting all of that data together to determine what is the impact on the whole safety of the railroad system. And then it's also about outreach and education, and that's a very critical point that I maybe haven't noted in my previous slides, that the training aspect and the safety culture, which points back to the DOT strategic plan, is focused on by the organization. So I'll go to the next slide. So all these big words and these 4 processes, and what does it mean for me or for you or for the inspectors, for the specialists, those here at headquarters? So the rules focus on the railroad developing a system safety or risk reduction plan. And the FRA does have the requirement to approve those plans within 90 days of receipt. So that'll be a busy process for us. I probably should have noted in a previous slide that it's not every railroad. There's about 200 and some railroads out there. This is the freight side of it looks at the Class 1 railroads as well as those railroads deemed to have a poor safety record, and it does apply to all passenger railroads. So we're not talking about 200 plans. We're talking about, hopefully not too many handfuls of plans. But that is probably our first step. And what does it mean to approve one of these plans? And what needs to be in the plans? Our regs do provide some detail there, but we're looking at the plan in terms of, is it compliant with what is required to be implemented? It's not determining, is the railroad safe or is it not? And I think that's important to note, because we want the railroads to own these processes. That they're the ones who improve safety. We help get them there. So step 1, approving some plans. The railroads are also required as part of the rules to perform an internal assessment to determine if they are being compliant with their own safety culture, their own processes, and their own procedures. Providing a certified report to the FRA to say, hey, I'm doing what I said I would do, and I'm doing it well, and I'm improving safety. So they will need to be doing that, and I believe it's on an annual basis, but that my memory may be escaping me on that. So, and then third, external audit, and this is really where we come in, where we go in and evaluate, checkpoint, provide some insight into whether the railroad is being compliant from our perspective, and also ensure that they're being compliant with the regulations. So this process that you see here, I believe this process is very different from the way we perform inspections. From an inspection standpoint, we have compliance manuals, and we go out and we evaluate whether a certain bungalow is locked, if a point is in the right direction, so on and so forth, if the track is compliant with the requirements. This process is really about evaluating whether a railroad is performing what they say they're going to do, but also determining, do they have the right processes and procedures in place to evaluate what is their biggest risk? What should they be focusing on? And does their plan point them in the right direction? So to me, this is a little bit different from what we've done, although in discussions that we've had so far, you know, folks in the OP division, folks in drug and alcohol and hazmat, we've had some very open discussions about, you know, this is somewhat similar, or it could very well be similar. So I think we have some very good examples that we can pull from as we develop our own processes on how we are going to be responding and ensuring that we perform our roles as outlined on this slide when these rules come in place. So I'll go to the next slide. I've already kind of started this slide, and what was noted is, you know, what does make this different? We need to evaluate the railroad in its entirety and how it operates. That touches track, it touches mechanical, signal, OP, the drug and alcohol program, and many other aspects of it. So ultimately, we need to look at the railroad as a system. So we will need each of you in each of your areas to be able to support this process and help us evaluate whether the railroad is being safe and in compliance with their safety program. So how do you go about assessing compliance to a railroad plan? Well, some of that is going to be down to you know, going out and looking at documents. You know, did they develop a report? Did they document it? Is it there? Some of that is very similar to what we do now on hours of service. But it is also, you know, one of the key points that I wanted to note is bullet number 3, pinpointing areas of concern. So ultimately, we don't approve a railroad's hazard analysis or their risk assessment. But as part of their system safety program, they have to evaluate their hazards and their risks and determine what is the most important for them to be addressing. We, as an organization, with the insight and the expertise that we have a very good view of that. And coming together with all the disciplines, we have an even bigger view of that. And we need to look at where do we want to be focusing when we evaluate their compliance to their system safety program. So part of our work is going to be evaluating the hazard analysis and the risk assessment, spot checking the data, looking at the frequency of events that occur to determine if their program is a true representation of the safety of their organization and whether their safety culture is actually improving those numbers that seem to have flatlined over the last 10 years. And I think this is the really exciting part of it, because we're going to be able to get closer to the railroad's data and their information to see how they work as an organization, how their technology works together as a system to identify and help take that flat line even lower. So to me, this is what is different to what we do today. And I look forward to the conversations with some of the divisions, as well as the regions who perform many of the system-level audits, to learn some lessons and figure out how we're going to document how we're going to be doing this going forward. So I'll go to the next slide. So we've termed what we're going to be, you know, how are we going to perform these external audits as it's documented in the regulations. We'll note on some of the slides that Carl will take us through something called performance audits. There's a general term to be used to really identify, to encompass several items. First is the external audits that we will be performing as part of the system safety and risk reduction rules. We will need multidisciplinary multidisciplinary teams. We will also need our risk analysis experts and our data experts to help us understand how all of this fits together. This will be over and above our compliance audits and inspections. Probably the most important point I want to note is system safety does not replace anything we're doing today. You need to keep doing what you're doing today in order for us to continue at least at the level that we are. You know, this is about drilling down in a different way and in a different manner in compliance with what we're required to do by statute, to look at other ways in which we can improve safety. One point to note is this approach and the system safety approach and what we're terming the performance audit is something also we need to consider for our performance-based regulations. And we have several of those. PTC is one of them, dear to my heart, as well as some others. And this approach is also something that Gabe and the team are considering on how we are going to oversee and ensure compliance of railroads to the PTC regulations, which is they have to comply with a 5,000 book safety plan. Well, you know, the way to do that is to look at their processes, their procedures, their data in a very similar manner to evaluate whether they're being compliant. So I'm excited to see how we can make the performance audits be a method that we can use not just for the system safety and risk reduction rule, but also for performance-based regulations, which is also another key DOT strategic objective. But as I've noted already, and I want to re-emphasize, we are doing some of this already today. And we need to build upon your experiences and your best practices. I highlighted OP hazmat, drug and alcohol. There are certainly others. There are also regional audits. There's the experience of evaluating safety plans, which, by the way, also have hazard logs and risk analyses, and they calculate mean time to hazardous event and all of that great stuff. So we need to build upon the experiences there. You know, as Carl noted, we're not going to create a brand new division and hire 20 new people or 30 or 100 new people to perform this role. This is going to be part of our day-to-day work. So we need to bring together kind of those experiences and also create opportunities for some folks to maybe transition into or support this as part of their job. One point to note, and this was brought up by both when we had our regional or the regional leadership here, as well as the staff directors. You know, many folks said, I don't know what system safety is. When are you going to train us? What tools are we going to use? Well, we are developing training. We do have some tools. I think we're going to need to develop some tools. So I just wanted to highlight the last bullet. Doesn't mean it's the least important. We are focusing on this and starting to develop and roll out some of the training. And I think definitely want the feedback you know, from those who are working this in the field as to what kind of tools, techniques, databases, other methods to use to support this. And in the little bubble that you can't read up there because the font's way too small, we will be putting together a working group. This is over, above, and a little bit different from the what's going to be talked about, the volunteers that are looking at the organizational review. We will be putting this together probably a little bit later on in the year after we've gone through some of the organizational work to start looking at the actual processes and procedures we're going to be using and developing to implement system safety and risk reduction, as well as support Gabe and the team, as well as others. And I'm really hoping those who perform some of this work today in the various divisions as well as in the regions will support this process. But by middle of next year, we need our approach to this fully documented, fully clear. Folks need to know what their roles and responsibilities are. There's going to be an opportunity. Carl will go through some few changes in the Office of Technical Oversight to really develop a performance auditing group, which will pull upon existing staff to either perform on a full-time or a part-time basis, support this initiative going forward. And I shouldn't call it an initiative, it's our future. So I hope this helps. I've probably tried to give this same presentation to a lot of different folks. I get a lot of blank looks, so it's really hard up here to know whether this made any sense or not. But hazard analysis and risk assessment is going to be part of your vocabulary going forward. But we need to make sure that it is clear and understandable to you all, as well as to the railroads, and work it into our current processes and procedures. So with that, I'll finish up, and if there are any questions, please send them to the email address. Thanks.
Thanks, Carolyn, and thank you for mentioning hazmat. Because everybody does care about hazmat, right? No, okay. So one other thing, got some text. So for folks who are out in the region driving around, listening to this, can you please mute your phone? We're hearing navigational software giving directions over what I'm saying. Maybe it's more interesting. I don't know. Maybe they're enjoying that. But all right. So I'm gonna get into this a little bit. So let's go ahead. So up on the screen here is the organization as it stands. So everybody should recognize that. I do want to mention one thing. Some of you may have gotten emails from HR about a human capital strategy project. That is not this. This is something that's separate, something that's done every 5 or 6 years that, like I said, HR runs. So it's different, but just so there's no confusion. And as I go through this, please understand I'm not going to get into specific positions, specific groups. We're looking at functions, although there are some groups mentioned, but that at this point, really getting down to that level of detail will be the teams that I'll talk about a little bit later. All right, if you can go to the next slide. So we're going to start down the organizational chart and try to run through this quickly so we can get to some questions. But the top half of the slide here is how we're currently organized, and as you look down below, you see there are a couple of changes. Operation and planning becomes operational training, operations and training. We're consolidating those efforts, and professional development training that used to come under communication resources will go under there as communication resource management will go under there as well, under the operations and training. Strategic communications will become its own entity. This is a really important group for both internal and external communications. A senior advisor will become non-supervisory, so they can focus on the very specific issues, legal and regulatory issues, and also the audits and safety board support. And then there will be business operations as well, so you can sort of see how they've come together. And we do hope to hire a senior technical advisor. Everybody here remembers Mark Hartung. That position's been open. Given the pace of technology, and especially PTC, having someone who is very familiar with that technology would be beneficial to have as an advisor to myself and Carol and Mike and the agency as a whole. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So this is stepping back. The top half is what we just covered, and looking down at the lower half of the slide, we now have similar groups. But in industry, what used to be tech oversight will become industry oversight, and what used to be safety analysis will be safety partnerships and data analysis. Regional operations remains. And now we're going to look into each one. So let's go to the next slide. So this is Carolyn's office. Used to be tech oversight. So what you see, I'll point out the executive officer and the industrial hygiene team will remain the same. Then railroad compliance will basically be the technical disciplines that we currently have. We've brought grade crossing and trespass over into this group because the overlap between the signal group and the grade crossing group is significant and important, and having them separated, I think, has resulted in some miscommunication, and certainly we could have done better throughout the years. So we're gonna bring them over, and you can see there's an infrastructure group, there's track, rail integrity, and bridges sort of grouped together. We've considered additional groupings, like maybe railroads have, an engineering group, a mechanical group, and then a transportation group. So you could see how some of this naturally falls into that, where maybe train control and grade crossing goes up into infrastructure, maybe motive power and equipment is equipment, the equipment group, and then OP, drug and alcohol, and hazmat could be transportation. I'm not saying that's the way it's going to be. Those are the type of conversations we want to have, because maybe that facilitates communication, interaction with the railroads over time. So not a ton of change there, but on the left-hand side of the screen is where the change is that Carolyn mentioned, is to develop the competencies, the processes of doing these audits, these performance audits. So we have three things here. So we have that top box, the railroad system oversight and performance audits, isn't really necessarily a position. It's just that's the group. We have industry liaison, which is a lot like what the RSOMs are, but it's also they're interacting with the railroads differently, but they're also doing they're liaising with and internally with FRA and helping to organize these performance audits. Then we have the folks who are going to really perform, lead, organize, get all that going, the performance audits. And then we have innovation. We have an innovation group, so emerging technology, really keeping an eye on these types of things, new services, human-machine interface issues, which given PTC, that's a big deal, and so we want to catch up, and if not, if we even get ahead of that. So these are important things, and just for being thorough, I just want to read this from our organizational manual. Right now, this group is responsible for developing and implementing processes or procedures to increase the effectiveness and scope of the rail safety program. They're to maintain a national compliance and enforcement program and provide direction and guidance to railroads, regional organizations, not railroads, RRSs, the Office of Safety's regional organizations, on discipline-specific technical issues related to inspection, enforcement, and accident activities. With this left-hand side of the slide, we're going to add a bullet that says leading and coordinating regional and multi-regional teams during system-wide national oversight audits or performance audits to evaluate proper implementation and execution of approved railroad programs, including training, system safety, risk reduction, emergency preparedness, and reporting. So that is, really at the heart of what this slide really does get to the heart of what we're trying to achieve at this first round of this at this stage of the reorganization, is to develop those processes and the competencies and have the organization to support that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this is the Office of Safety Partnerships and Data Analysis, and it is what is currently the Office of Safety Analysis. So what you see here, so the grade crossing is no longer in here, but we have rail safety partnerships. So that's the C3RS program, RISE, I'll talk about that in a minute, SOFA and FAMES. Now SOFA and FAMES exist, and they do a great job, but we certainly believe that there should be a headquarters organized or at least have some relation to headquarters and this whole rail safety partnerships. RISE, Rail Safety the rail information sharing environment is right now I guess it's a pilot program out of RPD where we're working with Amtrak and a couple other railroads on the Northeast Corridor to look at a particular issue. They're going to share data, and we're going to look at non-regulatory ways to mitigate the risks that's been identified in looking at that data. We have the rail safety data and information management. So this is all the data, how we're doing. You know, Kibo has a data lake program going on. I'm not going to get into that right now, but in the end, the hope is it makes it a lot easier for us to mine the data and use it for analysis. And then the data science and analytics and integration. So what we've done there is we've thought, you know, the economists do a lot of data analysis. We have operations research analysts, and they all go together. We've sort of squeezed those together to say this is a group who's really taking the data and doing analysis on it. And then our security, preparedness, and accident investigation or an accident analysis remains where it is today. So this is being developed. I talked earlier about aligning what we do a little bit better, and we think this is a better alignment for the support of not only what we do now, but also what we're hoping to do in the near future. So go ahead to the next slide. Nothing changed here. So we have, in Mike's group, we have state program, and then we have all the regions. Go ahead to the next. But there are going to be, you know, we certainly need the regions to align with what's happening at headquarters. So we'll look at this. So we still have a regional administrator, and then he's going to have the way, again, this is the way it's proposed now, open for discussion, 2 deputies. So 1 deputy is basically going to still have the discipline specialists and the inspectors. We have a dash line up to the staff director. We want to that's really there to highlight the importance of headquarters and the regions working together. Then if you look on the flip side, the performance audits, now that dotted line is going up to the group within Carolyn's office, the performance audits. And then we have a deputy and that's going to be in charge of that and all the audit coordinators. Now, those audit coordinators are going to be, you know, they're existing folks, and they're going to be pulling inspectors to help. They're going to be working with headquarters people. So this is going to be coming together of all different parts of the agency to perform these audits. Let's see. So we're going to. All right. I think that's. Okay. So go ahead to the next slide. So what are the next steps? So that's it. So that was painless, right? So that's really the organization, and that's our starting point for a conversation. I will say that we've identified the organizational alignment because of what we want to achieve, and Carolyn did a good job of lining that out. We want to be able to do these performance audits. We want to keep up with technology. We want to improve our consistency internally and externally, and we believe this reorganization will certainly help with that. We will. Okay, so we'll leave that. So the next, we have teams. So what we've done, so we've got this, what we've looked at here today, and then we've got teams, and I'm going to show that. There they are. So there's our team. So we have a couple of management teams. We have Carolyn, Mike, and I, and then we have a management team that is going to sort of, well, I'll start from the bottom. We have monitoring teams, RS10 and RS30. They're grouped together because really they need to work together. That we need to make sure that we're aligned, specifically looking at what we're trying to achieve. So we have teams. We put word out. Mark, how long ago did we put the word out for volunteers? A couple weeks ago? A couple weeks ago we put out a request for volunteers. So these are the teams. So the RS 10 and 30 monitoring team are basically people in different regions and throughout the headquarters. And their task is to go out and hear what other people's ideas. and begin to synthesize proposals based on those ideas. And then those proposals go up to the management team, who then further synthesize that. And then it gets to the management team, the general management team, which is going to take ideas from both the RS 10 and 30 teams, along with the 20 team, and then put together a very well-formulated proposal for Mike, Carolyn, and myself. And we will then take those and begin to fill in and refine the org chart that we have now and the processes that we're going to begin to follow. Can you go back a slide? So, right there. So all these teams, so what I just talked about, the point of them is, we got the teams, we're establishing communications channels, they're going to meet frequently. Mark's working on developing, we want these to be, we're going in, we're not just going to say, well, what do you want to talk about? We're going to have very specific topics to talk about, and if other things grow out of that, we'll certainly listen to what everybody has to say. And, the intention is to facilitate feedback, build some momentum behind this, and like I said, over time, really synthesize some very coherent proposals that we can go forward with. Okay, and then I guess, Mark, we're also going to we're going to identify deliverables and suspense dates and all that type of thing. So let's go ahead and to these are the last couple slides before we open this up for questions. So in September, we had the meeting. I talked about that, and we developed a communication plan. Vince and his team have put it together. We're having this town hall this month, and then we begin to work through the teams. And you can see it's pretty aggressive. We're going to meet throughout November, December. We're going to start looking how we go about getting approval through DOT for the new organization. Position, the review of the position descriptions. Go ahead to the next slide. And then that'll carry through January, and then February, March. You can see we're going to begin the transition. Now, there are going to be additional teams. Carolyn talked about one. Another, later on, we're going to look at the regions. We're going to consider, well, how are we organized out in the regions? There's a lot of ideas floating around, but we don't need to get to that point right now, how the regions are laid out. You saw the first slide, how there's been consolidation of the railroads. You see that the real regions have been the same. Is there a better way of doing business? We need to look at that. At the time that those regions were created, maybe it made sense because all the different railroads that were out there. Now we have fewer railroads, and we've sort of cut the railroads up geographically. We've cut the railroads up by discipline. So maybe there's a better way of doing that, and those are the types of things we're going to explore over time. So that's what's happening. We are, and I can't say this enough, this is something we need your input. We need everybody's feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We definitely don't, even disapproval is fine. We understand that. We want to understand where you're coming from, because in the end, what we're making is for us and everybody who comes after us. We were handed what we have now, and it's not a bad thing, but certainly, like I said, with all the potential we have here with the people that are working with us and new technology, we can do, I believe we can do better. And I believe Carolyn and Mike believe that as well, and hopefully you feel the same way. So with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to open it up in here and online for questions about anything. It can be about this organizational, this proposal. It could be about anything you want to know about the Office of Safety. And like I said, I'll either give you a truthful answer, make something up, or tell you I don't know and get you an answer. So fire away. Jamie.
Hi, this is Jamie Chope with the Strategic Communications Group, and Vince Haggard emailed a question in. With our state partners making up 1/3 of our total inspector workforce. How will they fit in the reorganization?
Well, in my mind, I don't think that I think our state partners will do the exact same thing they've been doing. We're going to want the state inspectors to continue to do their inspections. I think that by and large, they do a good job, and certainly if we're going to be transitioning to more audits and that type of work, the state inspectors even become a little bit more important, and really keeping and getting them involved, making sure they're part of the strategy discussions, they understand where we're going. So I think they fit in just fine, just as they are. Like Carolyn said, I said, we're not changing the fact, we're not stopping inspections. That's going to be an important part to both inform what we're doing on performance audits and vice versa.
Carl, will you pass out a PowerPoint or handout of this format, the structure?
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
Because a lot of it I couldn't see from here.
we planned that.
Okay, thank you.
We'll get that out to you. Go ahead, Jamie.
Robert Montgomery, Chief Rail Safety Inspection and Accident Investigation with New York State DOT, emailed in, what is FRA's strategy to ensure that rail carriers maintain the safety of rail equipment, given the current priority of increased velocity and less dwell time to repair the equipment?
Well, I think our strategy remains what it is today. I mean, so Precision Scheduled Railroad, this is one of the issues that we see, is that, they seem to be, they're moving the cars faster, less time in the yards for inspection. And I think our regions have adapted well to that, and they're aware of it. So I think that our regional folks have developed a strategy, and I think they've done a good job of responding to it. I haven't heard anything that would make me think that we need to change our strategy about how they're doing that. So certainly we'll keep an eye on it. We're looking to do a better job of our risk analyses. And if the data's showing that there's something happen, we need to continue to look at that. But certainly we're going to be leaning on our data and relying on our regional leadership to make sure that they're getting to the right place, knowing where they need to go. So, like I said, our strategy right now, I think the regions have adjusted, adapted, and responded well to what's going on. So I think we would just keep doing that. Sure, Carolyn, come on up. Okay.
So I just wanted to add also the risk reduction programs will be a key component to that going forward. That gives us the opportunity to further evaluate the data, the pinpointing bullet from the presentation, really to look at the key areas. Just because the railroad goes to precision railroading, they still need to maintain their safety culture and their processes and procedures. If the frequency of their incidents goes up, we then evaluate that in line with their risk reduction program. So I see these new opportunities for us over and above what we're seeing the regions doing as we move towards these new programs that we'll be implementing next year.
Manuel.
Are these new programs, the RRP and the SSP? I guess the RRP is for the freights and the SSP is for the passenger. It seemed like the description was that the railroad was going to develop their own RRP, their own SSP. What kinds of guidelines would they have? Because I would imagine if each railroad would have their own separate document, there'll be a lot of variances between these documents, perhaps, or perhaps not.
Now, I know, Devin, your team has put together a guidance document for developing an SSP plan, yes?
Yeah, I mean, taking a step back, at least for passenger, the SSP was based on an existing program that was already out there with APTA. So in a sense, that's been modified. So there's plenty of guidance in terms of being consistent between one railroad to the next and how they develop these programs. Freight's a little bit different, right? Obviously, it's a different animal to a certain degree, and they don't have the background programs like they had under APTA, so they're going to have to develop their own, but it's going to be based under Part 271, which will give them the basic outline of what they have to have. Now, going from there, you brought up a good point in that different railroads are going to develop different plans just by nature, right? And so that's where the restructuring for this aspect comes in important to make sure we're being consistent between one property to the next and how we enforce those plans, right? That's the big difference between enforcing an explicit requirement versus something that's written in a railroad's plan is how do you manage those differences between a West Coast property, let's say, from an East Coast property and how they decide to develop and maintain those plans. So, but there is plenty of guidance out there in terms of how to develop the plans. There is a precedent in many cases, so this is not new. Safety management systems have been around for a long time, so those will be more for the railroad and our internal staff who's in charge of reviewing and approving those plans to worry about. The auditing and the side of actually enforcing those plans will be something we have to determine as a group and figuring out what the best way to do that is going to be.
Thanks, Devin. Where's Kevin Blackwell when we need him? Right, Lisa? Jamie, anything else?
Yeah, I got a question from Gary White, and he is a Region 1 OP inspector, asking about how are we to assure that a regulatory interpretation is the same agency-wide?
Say that again.
How are we to assure that a regulatory interpretation is the same agency-wide?
Well, I think that, the key there is for whoever has the question, whatever the interpretation is, that it come up through headquarters, and that the headquarters work with the specialist and chief counsel and develop that and develop the interpretation, distribute it, have TTSD, make sure that we are properly training on it. And also, the staff directors are having at least quarterly calls with the regional specialist. So during those conversations, they could roll that out. TTSD can do their thing at recurrency or even beforehand. I mentioned the idea of that John Boots had about getting these informal type investigations, that information out. I mean, TTSD can be a powerful tool in getting these interpretations out consistently. And then, of course, it gets distributed from there, and then it gets put in the compliance manual. So I think that it's no different than the way it should be. I mean, it's always been that way, that question comes in, headquarters staff director takes the lead, assigns it to a specialist, works with the regional specialist, formulates something along with RCC, gets buy-off, and then we distribute it in a systematic way, and we train on it. So that's the way we should be doing it now, and that's certainly the way we should continue to do it. Lisa.
Devin mentioned enforcement. What kind of enforcement activity would we have for these system programs?
Go ahead, Devin.
Wow. You're giving it back to me. I just found out that was on camera before, so now I'm less willing to answer these questions. Enforcement for a plan, right? This is part of the issue that we have today, right? In that we know how to enforce what's in the book. It's pretty straightforward. But when we talk about risk and managing risk and enforcing a railroad's plan, that's where it takes a little bit more structure that we don't have right now. It takes a certain set of skills that we need to train up because you have to know what to look for. What are you interested in? And there's a lot of things that are going to be in a railroad's plan that you could assess, you could audit, you can enforce, but it may not be relevant to safety. So part of the attempt here is to be able to manage how we do oversight of those plans, how we enforce those plans. And a big part of that's going to be the training that was mentioned, making sure that we have the right support for our folks in the field so that when they are going to perform an audit, they know what to look at. And we just don't have that yet, right? That's going to be something that we have to develop as we move forward in this restructuring and determining what type of training we need, what level of training is necessary for different people at different levels. That's all going to have to be developed as we go forward. I don't even know who asked that and who I'm looking at here. So.
Lisa.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Good.
I have a question, that slide that you showed, Carl, where you had the group on the right and the group on the left. The group on the group on the right was the what we have now, the Office of Safety, Signal Train Control, PTC, et
Yeah.
cetera. And the group on the left, I guess it was people that were going to be dealing with the plans, the RRPs and the SSPs. And then it was also mentioned that there's not going to be a lot of hiring for these new groups. Is there a possibility then that somebody on the right would be doing two jobs, maybe doing signal train control and then doing some RRP reviews? Or is
Yeah.
that...
It's definitely a possibility that certainly the folks on the right in the divisions are going to support, they're going to have to support the left side of the screen. Because we're not going to have technical experts in every element of the railroad and the regulations over here on the left-hand side. So yes, for sure, the railroad compliance side is going to be tapped to assist with what's happening over on the performance audit side. Not necessarily, no. I mean, that's not the intent right now, but that's the kind of thing, Manuel, that we want to talk about is what's the best way to go about that? Is it better to have dedicated people over here, or is it better to just recruit as needed? So.
Jeff Futroska, Region 4 Chief Inspector, asks, what will be the chief's function in this reorg?
Well, the chiefs, so let's go to the regions. Nope, one forward. So as we have lined this out now, it seems, or it is that we are looking to the chiefs to help be audit coordinators. The chiefs can certainly help with to liaise with the folks in the headquarters and the folks in the inspection side, the discipline specific specialists and the inspectors. So again, that's how we have this lined out. And again, while we talk about specific people, all that is open for discussion. But we haven't really made that determination. But it makes sense to me right now that we would transition the chiefs over to audit coordinators. And again, that's another topic that is certainly open for discussion as we go into these teams. Sean.
In case of the region, you were just showing deputy regional administrator.
Can you start over so they can hear you?
Okay. Deputy regional administrator in charge of all the inspectors, and the other one in charge of something else, because they used to divide the...
Yeah, that's the way, that's what it says right now, and that was raised. When we rolled this out at senior leadership, that was a concern that was raised. And of course, we're going to have discussions on what's the best way to do that. Because right now, as you know, Sean, they're sort of divided up. The disciplines are divided up. And maybe, can you go back to that slide again, Ashley? Maybe the right thing, one more down. So that maybe it's divided. Maybe those tasks are divided. I don't know. We have to figure out what makes sense, to keep some of the discipline specialists under the other deputy. We have to really, that's a conversation that we need to have. But we did this for clarity's sake, just to identify what functionality. So that function is going to remain, and this function is going to be new. So how it's going to be organized, that's part of the discussion. Did I see another hand in there? No, Rob? All right. Go ahead, Jamie.
Joe Barry, a MP&E inspector, I believe, asks, are the audits going to be multi-regional audits?
Yes. Yes, I would think it's very likely that they're going to be, especially when you're talking about the Class 1 railroads. I would say that we need to, it's a system audit, so we need to look at the railroad as a system, and if we're going to look at, for example, BNSF, and we just have one region, I think we're missing out on the opportunity to understand the local knowledge that inspectors from all the other regions might bring to an audit like that and an understanding of that system. So, yeah, they are going to be multi-regional.
Yeah, because he followed up and asked, how can we ensure that we are consistent? Because he sees a difference across regions and application of the regulations.
Yeah, and I agree with Joe, and that's okay. So that's an important part. So yes, we would have an audit leader and have people from all over the country or the affected regions participate. Go ahead, Sean.
Maybe I'm the only one.
Wait, hold on. You got it.
Maybe I'm the only one that I don't know the answer to this question, but living along the regions, do we know what's the complement of FRA Office of Safety? Well, this is a new beginning. At least we have a list of people whom they are and where they are. So
Oh, we know. Yeah, we know who they are.
Any documents show that?
We know who they are and where they are, Sean. I know that sounds spooky, but we do. But yeah, we know that. In fact, we're developing a map and sort of trying to figure that very point out is how do we identify the people that should be on these audits, who should help, what makes sense. So we have a map and we've identified where the inspectors are relative to the railroad. So it might help us form those teams to really figure out where we need people and I mean, I'm not where we need them, but where we should bring them from to make sure we have an adequate representation. Jerry.
Carl, credentials. I know our credentials are really old school. We talk about paper and bearskins and stone tools and stuff. Are we doing something about getting access to like railroad IT systems, data, so that we can do data mining? Getting remote access to railroad IT systems? We work with RCC on that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, Carolyn mentioned about us being able to get to more data than what we are now because of the data protections, right? That's one thing. We are certainly trying to collaborate with the railroads to get more data, but actual access to their databases, I'm not aware of anything just right now. What if we've made taken any steps? Lucinda, is there anything that you know?
Not that I know of, and I think it's a little difficult because, there's FOIA, there's those kinds of concerns, and that's one reason why I think the railroads, wouldn't want to give us that kind of access. But there's just kind of for FYI, we're going through the reauthorization process, that kind of thing. There's department-wide initiative to include in any surface reauthorization bill kind of data protections for different types of data we may collect. So I think the government, it's kind of like if the government had actual access to your personal email or your personal bank account, we wouldn't like that, right? I think it's kind of a similar analogy between the government and private industry.
This is more the RISE program supposed to address. I mean, getting data from the railroads and have protection that are not discoverable. I thought that was the RISE's objective.
Well, so the RISE program, we're not getting the data, right? The data is going to a third party. They're doing all the analytics, and we're going to get the output of those analytics. I think that's a little bit different than what Jerry was talking about. I mean, Jerry's talking about actually having access to the data and being able to look. Yeah. But these are things, these are conversations. Ron Vittori, Carolyn, Mike, and I are meeting with senior leaders individually of all the Class 1 railroads and Amtrak and some of the larger holding companies. These are the type of topics we can bring up, Jerry. I mean, if we can begin to develop relationships and develop that trust, but like Lucinda said, I mean, you're not talking about possessing the data. You're talking about just having access to it to look at it. We're not downloading it. We're not printing it off or anything like that. Is that?
We'll get a multi-regional team, you know, to Omaha. We'll have 10 people there. We could have 2 people there and, you know, being Gophers and 8 people remote, it would be a lot better for us. I mean, in terms of travel budget and on hassle, the whole thing.
Okay.
And if that's where we're going, we could be more real time with it instead of, you know, hitting it every 3 years and then going away.
Right. Does that Kibo, does that answer your question? All right.
But I just thought, what was the purpose of actually accessing data on their system to begin with? If it's really about data sharing to identify risks, and that's, I thought it was.
I think Jerry's talking about audits, being able to audit their data and audit their programs remotely.
But that become data collection part that the regulation has to establish. I mean, that's my assumptions.
We do have to be careful that even though there's protections under the 270 and 271 rules, that doesn't mean we have access to, you know, anything we want. And by certain actions of ours, we could make that information discoverable, which is not what we want, right? Then the point is that, you know, there's more data out there that we're just not using to help us drive where to put our resources. And I think, if I can speak for you, Carl, maybe I'm wrong here, that's part of the goal here, is that we have a certain capacity with the staffing that we have and our inspectors and our safety staff in general. And so how we allocate who looks at what and when is just as important as what they're looking at. And we need to make sure we use all the tools we have, whether it's just data in general or programs like SSP, RRP, or even other things like PTCSPs, emergency preparedness. What are we looking at? And is it the most effective use of our inspectors' time or our, you know, Office of Safety time in general? That's what we're trying to get here. Not necessarily talking about one specific data point over another or what we use. It's how are we most effectively using our staff's time.
Right. Go ahead, Jamie.
Robert Ferrari, OP inspector. He wrote in about Part 229, testing locomotives, and Part 218, speaking about shoving. But with technology growing and the use of remote control operations, is there a plan to have a regulation in place for more remote control operation?
Do we have, Steve, or can anybody, do we have anything in the works with the MP&E rule that would cover that? That you know of? I got a no from Mark Fuller. Lucinda's shaking her head no, so we don't have anything in the works right now.
We don't have anything in the rule as yet for more remote.
But we don't have anything even in the works, like nothing, no proposed rule or anything?
None in the works, but we do have something in the rule for remote control.
For remote control, okay.
Yes.
Well, Lucinda has something.
I would just say, if there are things that are happening with the technology, with remote control technology, I mean, it's been around for a long time, and there's improvements that can be made to how our regs address it. That's something that we would like all the experts in the field here in headquarters, everyone who knows those technicals ins and outs and how technology is developed. It would make sense, and we would encourage you to reach up through your chains of command with that information, and if there's ways we can make the regs better and to, you know, to encourage more incorporation of more technology, then we certainly could pursue that.
Okay, thanks. John Brahaney over there.
With the success of C3RS, when you go to the industry leaders, the railroad leaders, are we any closer to getting these larger corporations to participate? And how will that come along with SSPP?
I don't know that we're any closer. I think somebody help me if they know the answer to this. I think one of the Canadian railroads was at least willing to think about it and talk about it, but I think that's as good as we get. I don't know if it was CN or CP, but otherwise they that what I've heard is that the railroads have their own programs, and they're using their own programs, and they're perfectly content with those. So, but it can certainly be, and it will be, a topic when we meet with them to find out where they are and if there's any interest.
Region 3's Lou Tomasoni asks, what will be the dynamic between the specialist and the staff directors? A couple of examples.
The dynamic between the regional specialists and the staff directors should be the same as it is now. Optimally, we want open lines of communication so that the staff director can organize meetings and provide guidance and consistent messaging across the country. So that dynamic, and if Lou, if you're listening, if you're wondering how the dynamic's going to change with this proposed organization, shouldn't change anything. Like I said, the inspection side and what's going on should remain unchanged. Hopefully, as Devin alluded to, that we're going to do a better job of allocating our assets through well-developed, collaboratively developed risk models and a focused inspection program where we rely equally on the inspector's local knowledge. So that dynamic shouldn't change at all.
Amanda Welty with TRAC is inquiring about FRA intending to address the increased budget necessary for these audits when we already cannot hire for vacant positions due to lack of budget.
Well, the staffing for them for this is intended to be neutral. We're going to be moving people around to develop these competencies. So we're not hiring. We're going to have to be very strategic in how we develop these teams, both at the regional level and at headquarters level. That's it. Anything else in here? That was pretty easy. All right. So if you're on one of these teams, we're looking forward to hearing from what you have to say. We're certainly, we encourage you to reach out to all your peers and make sure that their suggestions are heard, and that we begin to really focus in on this and develop the reorganization and also the procedures and processes and how we're going to go about doing this. So I look forward to watching all of us succeed in this effort. So thank you very much, and again, I look forward to hearing from you.